Hello and welcome. Apologies if you tuned in about an hour ago. I was running out of time anyway and had a technical glitch which had showed up before, and I thought, okay, have to stop the stream, but I promised I'd come back. Didn't expect it to be an hour or perhaps over an hour, but here we are anyway. And I thought it was important to talk about what I was going to talk about, because what I'm going to talk about is, well, you may have heard the news that there's a trade agreement being struck between India and the UK, and Keir Starmer that is keen to tell us how important and how good a deal it is. And I guess the question that I've got is it actually a good deal? Is this something which we should be happy about? And I am going to attempt here to pull back, push away any biases, any filters, any annoyances that I have had with the leadership in terms of the country, the Labour Party, the Prime Minister. What is this deal about? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it kind of meh, so what? To begin, what I thought I would do is to share with you a couple of articles that talk about this deal in an attempt to get a bit of balance, I have to say. And to do that, we'll begin here. And this, as you will see, is LBC. So they say the government has fended off criticism for its newly signed trade deal with India, stating the agreement can boost the British economy by £4.8 billion a year. So here is at a glance. British and Indian Prime Ministers Keir Starmer, Narendra Modi struck a deal. On Tuesday, it will see lower tax rates on imports between the two countries. The long-planned deal is one of the biggest signs since Brexit and has been hailed by the government as having the potential to, and we have the 4.8 billion, add to the economy within 15 years. However, elements of the fine print have sparked controversy, or controversy if you want to get controversial about that word, such as the exemption for Indians paying national insurance for 3 years. Yes, that does seem to be a thing which has annoyed quite a few people. The deal is set to come into effect next year, but will first need to be ratified by Parliament. Sir Keir is likely to meet Mr Modi later in 2025 to shake hands on the agreement. Okay, what goods are part of the deal? The UK has lowered taxes on goods imported from India, including clothing and footwear, food products such as frozen prawns. First of all, I've read that now a couple of times, and every time it makes me laugh. I don't quite know why. But so amongst all the serious and amidst the chaos and amidst the turmoil that this has caused, some people think this is a great deal, some people don't. We have frozen prawns, and just you know, we can sleep easy tonight. Jewellery, wow, and gems, and certain cars, hopefully good ones. Meanwhile, India has cut taxes on goods imported from the UK, including cosmetics, Scotch whisky, gin and soft drinks, higher car values, various food items such as lamb, salmon, chocolate and biscuits, medical devices and aerospace products. And you can see what the government is saying. So this is potentially good, or they're not saying potentially, they're saying it is good. And I think there is good in this, is the first thing I'm going to say, in an attempt to be balanced about this deal. But it might not be all good. According to The Guardian, it will boost British Indian trade by 25.5 billion per year, but crucially, it is going to help trade in areas that have been impacted by the loss of the US exports. The decline of the car trade between the US and UK is one area that the Indian deal could look to compensate for. The Independent has reported. All right, so maybe that is a good thing. Then let's go here. Robert Jenrick, the Conservative Shadow Minister, claimed that British workers come last, while his stablemate, Shadow Business Minister, Dame Harriet Baldwin said the deal would be subsidising Indian labour while undercutting British workers. So, the criticisms: British workers come last. Dame Harriet Baldwin: we would be subsidising Indian labour while undercutting British workers. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey also criticised the agreement, saying that plans on national insurance included in the deal were half-baked and that he would vote against it. Well, they may be half-baked because it's difficult to, at this juncture, know what the detail is or isn't. And I think that is a problem, and this idea of British workers being undercut, this idea of national insurance being a problem, has, you may not be surprised to hear, been at kind of the core of where the criticisms and the annoyance have sprung from. Well, let's keep going, because we have to hear from Nigel. Nigel Farage told LBC's Nick Ferrari that it discriminates against British workers. Is that true? Does it? And is Nigel really pointing out something in an acutely smart way, or is this just to stir things up? The Reform leader added, we are discriminating against British workers through the tax system, a two-tier tax system for big employers and for individual employees. It is scandalous beyond belief. The bloke running your local pub has just had a massive tax hike for all the staff that work for it. And I think, you see, that isn't hype. That isn't hyperbole. That isn't stirring things up for the sake of it. That is true. That, I believe, is one of the ways that we can begin to triangulate whether, perhaps not as much as this a good deal or a bad deal, but what does it feel like to many people in the population? And I spoke yesterday, and I think even the day before, highlighting the detachment that this government, and this leader in particular, seems to have to the emotional resonant frequencies that exist within the population. So let's go on. Keir Starmer, Daily Express, claims India trade deal happened because he cut winter fuel payments. Now, bit of a, how would I describe this? A stark claim and an emotive headline. Keir Starmer has been mocked after he claimed his decision to take winter fuel payments away from pensioners was responsible for securing yesterday's Indian trade deal. The Prime Minister made the bizarre argument during PMQs, parliamentary Prime Minister's questions in Parliament, when he was being challenged by Kemi Badenoch over the cruel benefits choice. Ms. Badenoch challenged, does the Prime Minister now admit he was wrong to remove the winter fuel payment from millions of pensioners? He insisted that the government was forced into the decision due to the inheritance left by the previous government. And again, that has also been challenged. Sir Keir, he's called there, continued, we're committed to the triple lock, which improved pensions by £470 last year. Mr. Speaker, because of the work we've done, we're a country that countries like India want to do deals with. Isn't that interesting? Ms. Can I get that right? Ms. Badenoch quipped, the only black hole is the one the Prime Minister is digging. And okay, that's quite funny, but what is the truth in all this? This claim that India signed the trade deal because Labour cut winter fuel payments was doubled down on by the Prime Minister's official spokesman following PMQs, Prime Minister's questions, who argued countries like India would only sign trade deals with other countries who have stable economies. Tory frontbencher Neil O'Brien added, God help me, I am no expert on politics. It's quite candid, Neil. But I think you actually, in this case, might mean politics, not only perhaps with the big P, but with the small p. But if I were Starmer's spokesman, I would probably not claim that I cut winter fuel payments in order to get a free trade agreement in which I cut tax for migrant workers. And basically, I think without the last couple of slides, you would get the gist of it. Effectively, what people are saying is in two camps, broadly speaking. One, there is a boost to the economy. It will be easier to export. There will be benefits in terms of imports, and we will be better off overall. Now, I think this requires economists to really have a look at. I mean, I'm quoting from tabloids and headlines, and they have their own biases. On the face of it, if you look at the numbers, it looks like a reasonable deal. But I don't know whether that's true. And I haven't yet seen any proper analysis by an economist or by several economists. And because of that, I think it is difficult to say how good this deal is. But what I do think that we can say is that it doesn't sit well with a lot of people. Now, of course, Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch will attempt to make mileage. They are politicians. This is politics. They'll attempt to get mileage out of this by saying, hold on a second, this whole deal is it's a slap in the face to British workers. The government would argue, but overall there will be a benefit. And again, I'd like to see some economic assessments of that. I'd like to see the small print. I'd like to see the detail. But once more, I come back to the issue that Keir Starmer and his government face, which is a lack of trust. Trust has been broken. They may never come back. Perhaps it can be repaired to a degree. Also, they face a population, a lot of the populace, but not all, but a lot, probably the majority now, feel let down by this government, that they don't represent Labour, that they don't represent anything significantly different from the Tories, except that they are perhaps worse because they seem to be a little bit more dictatorial. So when Keir said, I get it, and I spoke about that yesterday, I get it, but what he got is who knows, but essentially saying more, faster, do more of the same stuff. Now, he would know this deal was round the corner. Of course he did. He knew the announcement was going to come out, and probably he was batting things aside, the drubbing in the local elections in England, batting that aside because he knew he could go, hey, look at this. But I come back to, again, this individual is a leader. Because if you're reading the room, you would know that people are really annoyed. I've said it before, but a quick summary of only a few things. So-called black hole that somehow they were presented with and didn't know anything about it, even though their decisions were at least in part responsible for the extent of the black hole. The farmers, having cozied up to the farmers pre-election, then they have a go at the whole, let's say, family-run affair. And remember how important farming is to the whole nation. Also the WASPy women, photograph opportunities to look good, and then boom, the whole thing gone because of the black hole. Got to stabilise. You voted us in. Well, a lot of us didn't actually. You voted us in, and we're here, and we're gonna make sure that we are the stable party. But you broke all those promises, so that trust is gone. And you've doubled down on certain things, and you've been asked again and again and again to look at the winter fuel payments, and you're saying no. But what we're expected to do as a nation is to go, wow, this looks great. But even even if it is in terms of the numbers, once we actually understand what is really going on, then there is still that sense that, well, hold on a second. You lied, you broke promises, you continued to not answer questions in Parliament, not even remotely, as far as I can see, almost all the time. And you could argue that, yeah, other prime ministers have done that, but we wanted change. We wanted something different. And what you're doing now is, well, lo and behold, one of the other things that you did alongside farmers, waspy women, etc., is you changed national insurance contributions. And that really is hammering businesses severely. So that's the sore point. So even though you can come in and say, oh, well, there was this, and this, and the prawns are safe, everybody, safe prawns. We'll survive. The prawn economy is growing. Well, not good for the prawns, is it? But never mind for the moment. But certainly when people read no national insurance, when they read that we'll be able to ferry in, but we'll put a cap on chefs and yogis, and it's like, it is almost like a kind of Monty Python sketch. It is peculiar what they've done. But on the other hand, to be as balanced as I possibly can here, it could overall benefit. Once more, I need to see the figures. It could overall benefit. But will it, in actual fact? How many people are coming in? And if they're coming in and there's no national insurance and they have presumably access to healthcare, then Keir has recently, in deflecting the question about the drubbing in the local elections in England, talked about, well, the waiting lists are coming down. I hope somebody keeps an eye on that, because will they be affected by the volume of people coming in who are ostensibly providing, as I understand it, a labour supply which will possibly be cheaper? And how then do we get the people who are in a lot of the small towns, the inner cities, who are languishing and need to work because that is really good for them? And also, how do we increase in terms of our manufacturing base what we need to do to increase GDP? And maybe as part of this deal that happens. Maybe it does happen. Again, I need to see the fine print. But I think overall, some people will be really pleased because they'll see it as a good economic deal. But I think a lot of the people who were just disconnected from this leader and this government will feel even more disconnected. It's not good. And what I believe Keir should do, is address the nation and talk about those concerns. Imagine this as a scenario. He's going to talk about the pensioners. He's going to talk about the farmers. He's going to talk about the waspy women. He's going to talk about the national insurance hike. Apologise, explain, say what's going to happen. Tell us when these things will be turned back round again. There's no talk of that. It's all about faster, further, more. More what? More what? Just to use the word I used yesterday, disenfranchising vast swathes of the nation. So again, as a leader, I'm just not getting it. He just is not connecting with me. He's not connecting with a lot of people. There seems to be this emotional disconnect, this robotic, this mechanistic way of going about things. And because of that, and as such, when news like this comes in, it is tainted. It is tainted by those headlines that look like people from another country are being favoured in terms of their ability to work. Now, logically, you may be saying, oh yeah, but it's quid pro quo, and in actual fact, there'll be benefits for British workers out there. Even if that is the case, it doesn't feel right. And Keir and your team and anybody waiting in the background to become Prime Minister, pay attention to that, because if you think about times when the country has been on its knees before, what do people do? They do things to raise morale. And I can think of various times. We just celebrated 80th VE Day, celebrated it. There were times during those exceptionally bleak times where morale began to shift. It was getting lower. And what did people do? They ensured that morale was boosted. And what is happening here with this deal is that because it is a mixed message and because of that disconnect with this government and that leader, it hasn't boosted morale for a lot of people. In fact, it's decreased it because they just feel shunned and ignored and at the bottom of the pile. Because it's about emotions, it's about feeling, it's about connection, it's about a sense of being in things together. And without those feelings, without that connection, then morale will remain for a lot of people very low, and that's not good for them, physically, psychologically, and ultimately it isn't good for the country, unless we're just going to outsource everything, and this is just the start of it. And to heck with people who try and run businesses in the UK or want to employ people from the local community with a view on a 10 and 20 year and beyond plan. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Don't know what you think. I don't believe that there's any questions or comments that have come in. Hold on. There is one. Yes, if this is live, if it is a live comment, I think he ought to be talking about, I'm not sure what the algorithm does, so I'll say the grooming gangs and how his life, and how is he going to prosecute offenders and expose all those in the cover-up. Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. I've changed the wording slightly. I hope you appreciate it. I'm just not sure what the algorithm would do if I use some of those words, but hopefully you also understand why I've not only done that, but if you can't read the comment, then maybe you can guess what that was about. I'm sure you can. And if you can't read it, again, apologies for changing it slightly, but I'm not sure of this platform. And what we have there in the moment, live, is an actual concern. And this is one of the things that I was attempting to get to, the core of what people are caring about and want answers to and worry about and are fearful of. And they're not right-wing, and this is not an extreme view. It is a perfectly normal and rational view because people want to feel safe. They want to know their families are safe. And that sense of safety and belonging in a community that is supportive is also being encroached upon by at least how this deal with India looks, because it looks like the workers who are in the country, the people therefore who are in the country, are being shoved further down the food chain. And that may not be the case, but if it isn't the case, then why isn't this being explained, and why isn't the Prime Minister talking about it? And I talked a couple of days ago about control, another core need of people to feel that they have some agency and efficacy in their lives. And if that control feels like it's taken away, in other words, we're being told what's going to happen by the left-wing autocratic leadership, extreme left, I should say, which is very similar to extreme right, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So we're told what to do because we're here to deliver, but we'll decide how that looks, and we won't listen to you when you criticise us. So what sense of control is there? And when people are worried about the channel and are worried about some of these gangs, then what sense of security and safety, what sense of justice and fairness is there? So if you start rattling the cage of people and make them feel very unsettled about things like agency, control, fairness, security, and a lack of even being listened to, then it is a recipe for unrest and further mistrust and a diminution on any trust that may or may not still be left with the government. So read the room, get in front of a camera and talk about the concerns of the majority of people in the country. And maybe then once you address that and told us what you're going to do about sorting some of that stuff out, we might go, do you know what? That deal has some reasonable parts to it. Maybe. Remains to be seen. Remains to be seen if you will talk to the nation at all as a person, as a human. Anyway, for the moment from me, and thank you for the input, bye for now.